Do good work is not a label, but a way of living. It is the constant and diligent effort to achieve a new level of excellence in one's own life. It is the hidden inner beauty behind the struggle to achieve excellence. It's not perfect, but imperfect. It is the effort, discipline, and focus that often goes unnoticed. The goal of Do Good Work is to highlight that drive. The guests I have on this show emulate this drive in their own special way. You'll be able to apply new ideas into your own life by learning from them. We will also have one-on-one episodes with me where we'll dive into my own experience with entrepreneurship and leadership. Every episode is designed to provide you with ideas that you can apply and grow in excellence in all areas of your life, business, and career.
Today on Do Good Work, we have Anna Shutko. Anna is a product and marketing professional specializing in tech, SaaS, and startup growth, and is the product marketing manager at Supermetrics. At Supermetrics, she oversees the launches of new connectors such as Instagram Insights, HubSpot, Taboola, Pinterest Ads, Snowflake, and 17 others. She's also the host of the Marketing Analytics Show, where she catches up with marketers and analysts to learn how they're using data to make better decisions. And she's on a mission to inspire marketing and business professionals to better analyze business data and to make the best data-informed decisions. Awesome. Well, Anna, thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
And I'm really excited, and I know you're excited as well around the topic of data and making smart decisions with data, and I know with the energy around data, like how excited I sound around it. I do want to get your intake in regards to what brought you to this place right now where you're at. Like, out of all the things, being a product a marketer and a marketer in general, like, why data and why now? And like, what are some of the things that you're seeing to pull you into focusing on the data aspects to make smarter decisions?
Yeah, sure. So for the audience, maybe if somebody's not familiar with the company I work at, Supermetrics, I can briefly describe who we are and what we do, so then everybody feels what my excitement about data is and why it sort of came to be. So Supermetrics is a data pipeline, if you can imagine. So basically we have data sources on one side and data destination on the other side. So on the data source side, we have Google Analytics, Facebook ads, Google Analytics, Google ads, Facebook ads, HubSpot, Shopify, and can be literally any marketing or maybe e-commerce data source that the marketers are using. And these are the sources, so where we're pulling data from. On the destination side, we have Google Sheets, Google Data Studio, BI tools, data warehouses, databases, basically all the places marketers are pulling data to. And like I mentioned, Supermetrics is a pipeline, so we connect the two. We can pull data from any source to any destination. And that's about the concept. When I started at Supermetrics, something like 4.5 years ago, a long time ago, we only had Supermetrics for Google Sheets and some legacy Excel products. So basically, the Excel add-in and scripts that can pull data to Excel. Now we've expanded our offering to data visualization tools, data warehouses, databases, like I mentioned. And I think the amazing and exciting trend that I see around it is that marketers, first of all, are not only using spreadsheets to build their reports there. It's amazing that they're using spreadsheets. Spreadsheets is a great tool, but it doesn't fit everyone. And the growth of our company, Supermetrics, kind of is related to the way the data volumes have grown. So you can imagine that at first you only had a spreadsheet where you might pull some campaign data, but now you need a data visualization tool like Data Studio to have much better reporting, and bigger companies are now using data warehouses where they store much larger volumes of data, and then once they have all this data in a data warehouse, they can export this data to a BI or any other more complex visualization tool. So like I mentioned, you can see that the data volumes have grown. That's on the data destination side. On the data source side, the data complexity level has also increased. So the APIs are more robust. In other words, now we can extract not just the basic metrics like cost per clicks, number of clicks, impressions, etc., but also custom metrics. You can, for example, create your custom event in Google Analytics. Now we have Google Analytics 4, which is full of custom events, and extract that more granular data to a reporting tool of your choice. So that allows marketers not only understand how their marketing campaigns are performing, but also how all these results are tied to business results in general. And if you're an e-commerce marketing manager, for example, you can also pull data from Shopify. So you can connect how your campaigns on AdWords and or Facebook ads are performing and tie this data to your Shopify revenue data. So you can see and measure the direct ROI of your marketing efforts. And that, I think, is very, very exciting. And then we see more APIs coming up. I'm really excited about more podcast APIs. So we'll be able to analyze podcasts more in depth, the audience, how people respond to different episodes, what topics they're interested in. And this way, marketers can tailor content much, much better. And instead of a guessing game, now we have a very sound system of measuring efforts.
No, I love that. And like in the era that we're heading towards in terms of data privacy and the focus around the importance of data, we're leveraging this information to make better decisions, not only to how we can either cater new products or services to our customers, and I'll give some examples in just a second, but also depending on how the audience is responding to our messaging, to our marketing, to our videos, to our podcasts. And the more that we know, the better that we can create better products, better content, better books, better blogs in order to really address the needs of the market. So it's kind of like a two-way street. Like the market needs will be changing, but being able for us to understand and really get these data points or the data sources to really make those accurate decisions. Because if not, we're just flying blind. And I want to I know for our team, our audience here might be overwhelmed with the amount of how much data can do. And well, I don't know how to connect these things, how to set up these things. But I want to give some, I think, practical use cases first of the importance of leveraging the data and also being able to see how you can use data. And then maybe we can talk through some practical builds or setups, because now, nowadays as marketers, the profession is getting more and more technical, right? You have to understand the principles of marketing, but now the principles of the tech side to making sure that we're making the best messaging products that we can.
Yeah, sure. So in my opinion, there are several different aspects to it. So on one hand, you're right, marketing is becoming more technical. So it's kind of good news and bad news for some marketers. Good news because finally we're able to use the technology to our advantage and get the most of it. And I'll come back to that in a second. And maybe the bad news is that now you have to be a lot more, if not data-driven, then data-informed. So every single decision you're making, you have to back it up with data, and the data has to be accurate, and you have to ensure that. So now if we talk about more practical applications of why marketers need to be data-driven, and maybe I can also give a few examples what kind of reports they create in different tools. So first of all, why would someone need to use tools like Supermetrics and be data-driven at the same time? First of all, if you are trying to create reports currently, and I hope marketers do create reports in one way or the other, because I feel like if you are not really creating any reports, not analyzing the data coming from your campaigns, or just analyzing it in one place, then you can be very, very much blindsided and not see the full 360-degree picture of how your efforts are performing, so to say. So I hope marketers are creating reports. Traditionally,
listening to this show, it's just the standard right now. You got to make reports. You got to make sure that you know what.
Exactly. Exactly. So traditionally, you would have to either copy paste into a spreadsheet or download CSV files, which creates a lot of pressure to keep the data up to date all the time. And I know from one client example of ours, before Supermetrics, it took the team something like 1 to 3 days to only collect the data, and then you'd have to analyze it, and then you'd have to update it because the numbers change all the time, and then it's challenging because this has to be a rolling process. So, like I mentioned, with Supermetrics, you can pull the data, set the refresh, and forget about it. The fresh data will flow in through that pipeline. And I think it's very important because marketers have to really ensure they have very, very good reports so that they, first of all, can present them to the clients, which further improves client relationships, transparency, etc. And at the same time, they also have to provide good reports for the team, because normally it's not, like everyone on the team building reports. Normally it's one person building reports, and then everybody's using these reports. So imagine if one person copy pastes the data, makes a mistake, then the whole team is going to make the wrong assumption, and then they're gonna exactly. And they're not going to arrive to the right conclusion, or they're going to do something wrong, or they're going to spend time investigating what went wrong when in fact the data was not there and the data was not accurate. So as you can probably already tell, modern tools basically remove hurdles from reporting processes. At the same time, we equip marketers with very, very good tools, and that's the good side of it, in my opinion. So yes, marketing is becoming more techy. It sounds scary. When people hear marketing data warehouse, they freak out. Like most of them freak out. And I think, yes, while it does sound scary, you should not be really scared of it, because the tools that are built for marketers are exactly built for marketers. They are built with the target audience in mind, meaning that they're super user-friendly. Even if you're trying to create your marketing data warehouse with our tool, it's super easy, in my opinion. I might be biased though, but if you are trying to push data to a visualization tool, you just have to select different metrics, split them by different dimensions, select the date range, and then launch this query. It's as simple as that, really. You would have to learn the interface of a data warehouse where you want to pull the data to, yes, but it's not that complicated, in my opinion. Plus, it gives you an additional advantage of digging deeper into the data world and really learning how exactly you can make your decisions more accurate, even in your own head. And I also think that when you're presenting with data, when you're building these well-made reports, that makes you feel confident. So it's not only about what you're doing, it's also about how you're feeling. It makes you more professional. And I think it also really helps you ensure that every single decision you're making is based on relevant data. Therefore, it is more confident, more relevant to the business, and potentially can result in much, much higher revenue.
So I love how you made it easy to approach, is that the tools out there, including Supermetrics, are user-friendly, and it's not as daunting as we might think it is. And usually in general, it's never as daunting as we imagine it to be. But the fact to be able to create that feeling of confidence, and that confidence taking action equals a business result, a bottom line result, I think that's really important. So one of the things that I teach, and one of the things that I work with clients on, is building what I call a core operations sheet. And in that core operations sheet, we talk about the different habits within the organization that attribute to a bottom line result, or a top line revenue result, depending on how we're looking at it. But those actions are something that we can control as business owners. For example, the majority of those actions are sales and marketing driven. Leads, prospecting, sales, closings, daily revenue, etc. And these all have different locations of where we're tracking those metrics. So let's have a master sheet where we see all the habits, but then those have sub sheets where they have like my daily metrics, for example, for, let's say, podcasting, for guest blogging, for Facebook ads, YouTube ads. You can use tools like Supermetrics to be able to port that data over in those sub spreadsheets, have accurate data, and then make sure that the habits that you're doing in your company are supporting the overall bottom line structure. And these tools, again, give you that confidence to create that certainty in your business that you need to continue to drive the business forward and your team forward. I'd like to kind of like pick your brain at it, because you've had the luxury to be able to talk to a ton of marketers. And that's the thing that's amazing, to be able to understand how different businesses and use cases are leveraging data to make decisions. When it comes to the business intelligence side, so this is more like it's like jargony, but it's essentially like a centralized port of all your data to make smart decisions. If we put it in layman's terms or in Raul terms. I'd love to learn from you, like, what are some of the most unique and practical use cases that you've seen teams leverage Supermetrics to get a holistic view of their data sources and what data destinations or interfaces they're using that make sense for different use cases? Because it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah, exactly. So here I'd like to maybe differentiate. So we have the agency clients. Basically, an agency is someone who is building reports not for themselves, but primarily for their clients. And then they're relying on every single piece of information the client can or should provide to them. Then we have in-house teams, where basically can be also large, small, companies of really any industry. I've met marketers coming from many different walks of life and many different businesses, so to say. And also, like I probably already mentioned, these can be differentiated by size. Can be a large agency like TBWA, and we had a luxury to work with them here in Finland. It was amazing. And can be a really small, one-man team. And all of them are using very, very different products. So in terms of use cases, these usually depend on the industry, like I mentioned. So of course, there can be a classic use case, which I call the paid channel mix report, where all the data from all different paid channels, Facebook ads, Google ads, Twitter ads, et cetera, is coming in one dashboard. And now we've added new sources such as core ads, for example, where you can really target questions people are asking and analyze how these different channels, how the campaigns that are running on all these different ad channels affected the bottom line. So how many conversions came from Twitter ads, for example, versus Facebook ads. This way, you have to be really so you have to be really careful here, because you have to always be comparing apples to apples. So you have to run the exact same campaign on all different channels, so you will be able to compare it. But this is one very simple example that I usually give. This is something that marketers usually start with. This is more for maybe like small to medium-sized teams. Now, bigger teams, of course, have more data, and that really depends on how exactly they're building their reports and what exactly do they want to track. So like I already mentioned, there can be cases with Shopify where people will track what kind of SKUs are trending, and you can really report very granular data. So you can see what color of your t-shirt is selling better and attribute that to each individual campaign, which in my opinion is very fascinating, because then you can understand where you have to increase your bids in order for a particular item to sell much better. That's purely e-commerce use case. Another very interesting use case we've seen was, I wouldn't name the company, but what they were doing were combining data from their paid ads together with their product data, so how well the products were selling, and at the same time combining it with data coming to their customers via SMS or any other notifications. So they had a very holistic overview of how many people click on the ad, how many people contacted the sales rep, then how many people bought a particular product, and then how many people were also reached via, for example, SMS to buy again. So this way, we're not only tracking something people bought at the very end of the funnel, we're also tracking, okay, were they a repeat customer? And this data can come from GA or any other analytics tool the company is using, and then attaching this data to other marketing campaigns post-purchase flow to see whether they bought something again. And this way we can also measure LTV and many other important business metrics. So this is what I'm talking about when I say marketers are not just marketers anymore. We always have to understand how the business works and tie every single marketing result to business metrics. So here are a few examples.
No, that's key, because it's like taking and marrying the customer journey to the data that we're collecting, but also to the marketing that we're doing and the positioning that we're making along with the customer, so that we can enrich their experience and add delightful moments, and as well as drive business, business goals forward. One of the things that I'm curious about, so I think there is a point where we might max out in regards to using, for example, Google Sheets. I know a lot of my past experience has been with the Google Sheets, but like a friend of mine recently hit the max limit of a sheet. I think it's like 50,000 cells. So now he has to build his own database and data house in order to put the data in and then make these assessments. For when we're looking for the audience, I'm asking on their behalf, when we're looking at our data sources right now, how do we know what's the best type of setup for us? Like, if should we use a Google Sheet with Supermetrics? Should we use Data Studio? Should we use, I think Microsoft has theirs as well. Like, what are some of the best decision-making factors for us to analyze the tools that are at our disposal in order to really hit our best use case? And because, again, like you mentioned earlier, sometimes it's intimidating, so we don't take that action to move forward with it. How can we create some clarity so that we can move and take action when it comes to data?
Yeah, sure. That's a great question, actually. I think we should really think about the data size here, like you mentioned. Of course, it's not very wise to, hit the limit of a Google Sheet every single time, because it will be slow and you will not really create a great report out of it. Generally, it's not very good to use Google Sheet as a database. You can use it for storing some data. For example, if you want to then transfer that data to Google Data Studio or any other visualization tool. But the general practice is that you don't really store data in a Google Sheet. Data warehouses are much better tool for that purpose. So if we are talking about the use cases, let's talk about the use cases here for a second. Now, for the Google Sheets, or in general for spreadsheets, I would usually say these tools are much better for so-called ad hoc reporting. So if you want to look up why your campaign XYZ, why clicks coming from your campaign XYZ dropped, you might want to quickly query, pull this data into a spreadsheet, and then analyze it, and then go to Facebook Manager and then fix the campaigns. So that's ad hoc reporting. Very simple, requires minimal effort. You can create a couple of queries, figure out what's wrong, and then go fix it. You can also create a paid channel mix report in spreadsheets, but again, the data volume doesn't have to be very big. And primarily, spreadsheets are used for in-house teams. So if you have a client, I would recommend using a Google Data Studio or a data visualization tool, because the reports become, first of all, much more interactive. It's quite hard to build an interactive report in Google Sheets. You really have to know how to create a very nice, good-looking design there, which is quite challenging, but in Google Data Studio, it's quite easy. There, you already have a nice-looking design, and you can just spruce it up with some colors. And Google Data Studio has a lot of native integrations, so it's easy to pull data from the sources there directly. But of course, Google Data Studio is not also intended for large queries. So for example, if you want to pull data from 2-3 years back, so a lot of historical data, then I would recommend you switch to a data warehouse. Or then another use case that we're seeing now is that data scientists and data architects, marketers who are more tech savvy, dump the data to a data lake and then connect it to a data warehouse. So that's another scenario how you can go around it. And a data warehouse is a very, very good tool for, like I mentioned, storing your data, because it scales with use. So you hit the spreadsheet limit, time to switch to data warehouse, or if your spreadsheets really become slow, then it's a very good indicator that you have to look for an alternative solution. So you can switch to a data warehouse, scales with use. It's super easy to set up the queries there from different sources. With Supermetrics, you can store as much data as you like, and then you can connect it to lots of different visualization tools if you want to create more complex visualizations. Another aspect which I would consider there is the type of analysis you'd like to run. So if you would like to, for example, do more of predictive analytics, so looking into the future, you are not going to be using a spreadsheet, because in my opinion, that's not exactly suited for the purpose best. A BI tool is much better because it will allow you to create more custom calculations there. Of course, you can always use a spreadsheet formula, and AJ Wilcox and I, by the way, created a simple spreadsheet how to calculate your LinkedIn ad spend and how to predict how much money you're going to spend throughout the month on LinkedIn ads. But that's a very simple use case. If you want to create a very comprehensive report that really tries to analyze a lot of different factors and see how you would use your spend, then I would recommend you switch to a data warehouse and then connect it to a BI tool and analyze the data there.
Oh, interesting. No, I really like how you broke that down. So it's for our audience, just to recap that and to break that down. So essentially, when you're starting off, a Google Sheet might be for quick queries, for quick answers that you're looking for, and it's not the best place for you to store long term. I know that we kind of touched on data lakes, but I'm not sure if that's something that we should dive too deep into right now. But I do want to dive into what a data warehouse is, the options for us for using data warehouses, and then the difference between storing data and then seeing the data. So when we're talking about visualization tools, essentially it's just a way to interpret the data so that you can see visually what that data is telling us, because data is meaningless if we don't tell stories through it and be able to understand a purpose or an intent for us to move forward. So when we grab data, that's pretty much the pull. We put it in a warehouse, or we put it in a spot. We call that a data warehouse or a data studio. But then when we're visualizing that data, we're using specific tools that allow us to pull that data from where we're storing it from its house, and then we're able to see it and interpret and make decisions. And that's what we're talking about here. Those are the different elements and components. So I know there are a lot of different options for data housing or data warehouses. What are some of the, I guess, more practical, based on your experience and the use cases that you've come across, in order to store data appropriately, in order to pull it back in the future to make, if we want to make predictive analysis, I think that's a separate use case. But for right now, like, let's say we're running our business, we have different lines of marketing going. Where should we decide? What are some of the options that we should look at in order to decide to store our data in?
Yeah, sure. So I think this decision should not be obviously made by marketing alone, because in my opinion, it would not be very wise if, marketing stores their data in warehouse X and then the data team decides to store another piece of data in data warehouse Y. So of course you should discuss this with your data team, and this is where the alignment between different teams is really key. But yeah, just to touch on the topic of a marketing data warehouse, the place where you would store your data should not, in my opinion, be dictated by marketing. It really, like I mentioned, should be a very common decision, but it often depends on what ecosystem you're using, whether you're using Google, Microsoft, etc. So for example, Google, we have Google BigQuery, which is the data warehouse, and then we have Google Data Studio, which is a data visualization tool. So typically what happened, and this is, by the way, something that many agencies use, and I heard a lot of comments about Google BigQuery. Marketers were saying it's great because it seems like Google BigQuery was designed with marketers in mind. Maybe somebody who's using Azure would disagree, but that's what I heard. Yeah, so basically you would pull data to a Google BigQuery and store it there. And then, like you mentioned, you would extract it. And you can also, for example, use Supermetrics connector for Google Data Studio. So what we've done, we've built data pipeline so that marketers can create a data warehouse in BigQuery, and then from there they can export it to Google Data Studio. So what it does essentially is that you can store a lot of your historical data about your campaigns in a data warehouse. It doesn't go anywhere. It's always there, and it's safe and secure. And then you can extract pieces of these data and then combine it with different data to visualize it in Google Data Studio, which is great because Data Studio is a free tool and it's absolutely free for any use. You are just paying for storage, but you're not paying for visualization. So this is something that I would maybe recommend for someone to start with. Now, of course, I mentioned the BI tools. Google also provides a lot of different solutions for analyzing data with more complexity, but I think if you're talking about more simple visualization, then Data Studio is a great way to begin with.
To get started. And I think that's important too, to be able to analyze it. Not like you mentioned earlier, it can't just be one department storing data in one place and making that decision for everyone. I think it starts from leadership down and making sure where are we storing our data, the integrity of that data, and protecting that data too. That's the number one. It's the number one focus really nowadays. With all this we're discussing, obviously, it's very tactical, very tangible in regards to how we're leveraging and using data. I'm curious to know, maybe get a little bit on a higher level, is like, what are the trends that you're seeing with data that excite you in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I really love the data trend in general. I love that marketers who sometimes started from, using spreadsheets are now using or starting to use a data warehouse, which clearly shows that more and more people are becoming more tech savvy, which is amazing. More and more marketers, like I already mentioned, are starting to use predictive analytics, which is great because we're trying to peek into the future. Now, another trend I see is data enhancement, and this also depends on the data granularity or the data richness of your company. So obviously, in order to perform complex analyses, you have to have a lot of data. The data has to be of high quality. The data has to come from different sources, and it has to be very well documented and understandable. And you have to have marketers and analysts who are able to work with this data. So data enhancement is essentially, okay, let me provide you an example so maybe it's easier to understand. For example, you're running your campaigns on different networks and say, okay, this is maybe a pre-COVID era example a little bit, but you're running an event and the event is outside. So then you would maybe combine your ad data together with your ticket sale data, together with the weather data. And the enhancement part comes from this weather data. So the weather data would be coming from an open source API or any other open data source. And this will also help you analyze the bigger trends. So maybe a bit of a big data here. How the weather is affecting the ticket sales. Obviously, when it's sunny, then more people would love to go outside and have fun and buy more tickets, and therefore you might want to increase bids for these campaigns. And then if it's raining, then you might want to decrease them or repurpose your campaigns or then sell something else, but not the tickets to an outside event. But you can see the analogy here. So basically, we're not just using marketing data, we're combining marketing data with all different other types of data, and then we're trying to make these predictions. And I think this trend is just going to grow and grow and grow with time. Obviously, there is now a lot of AI analysis happening, but this is it's pretty popular, but I would say not many companies are using it across the whole organization. So maybe it's not in every single company yet, or at least not that widespread across the organization. So we're yet to see how all of these bigger trends are going to affect marketing and how marketers are running their campaigns and analyzing them.
That's interesting. So it's like leveraging third-party relevant factors within the existing, data flows and seeing how that influences, our actual business goal or activity. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Anna, for all of our listeners here today, what's the best place for people to go to thank you for this episode and learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. I'm super happy to reply to everyone on Twitter. So it's at Anna Shutko, Shutko there. Or you can always connect with me on LinkedIn, Anna Shutko there as well. And yeah, just check out the Marketing Analytics Show. I'm hosting the Marketing Analytics Show, which is a part of our amazing Supermetrics family. And this is a show about how marketers can analyze marketing data, use different data sources, and create great reports. And we have fantastic guests there. So I highly, highly recommend you check it out.
That's awesome, Anna. Well, thank you so much. I'll put all those links in the show notes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.